Well, dude, I got to first start off by saying thank you from the bottom of my heart for playing this show for me. It's a big 20th anniversary party that we're having. 20 years at KCAL, 20 years of rocking the IE coming up here on Saturday, November 9th at the beautiful, man. I can't wait for you to see this club. Beautiful brand new club, Stage Red in Fontana, which is Sammy Hagar's club. He
Crazy. Yeah,
grew up
that's
in
amazing.
Fontana, so he's rebranded the club and they've redone it. And man, I was trying to think back, 20 years ago. It's crazy thinking back for me 20 years ago. You've been in the game a lot longer, but man, 20 years ago, got fired from the radio station across the street in a bad relationship, not necessarily sober at the time. And went across the street and been at KCAL ever since and gotten life together and married and happy and it's crazy, man. Looking back on 20 years ago. Do you remember where you were 20 years ago?
Well, let's see, what would that be? That would be,
2004.
yeah, 2004. Well, that was it's funny, that was an interesting time because that was sort of a tough time for me and the band. We had all this success with Tonight the Stars Revolt, in the late 90s into the early 2000s. And then we put out a record in 2003 called Transform. And it was when everything started to get weird in the music biz, with
Right.
the labels, Napster, all this stuff happening. And our then label, DreamWorks, just shut down, in I want to say late 2003, early 2004. So at that time, I was like, whoa, well, shit. Well, I guess that was fun. Like that was a cool ride. And because at the time, I think a lot of bands still valued themselves with a record deal.
Mhm.
Not like today where no one even thinks about getting a record deal.
Right.
So it took me a long time to figure out that the band still had enormous value, whether we were signed to a major label or not. So, but there was a couple of years where I just kind of was like, well, maybe that was what it was, and then it took me a minute, and then I was like, nah, hell no, I like let's get this going again, and we started putting out more records and touring, and here we are, 20 years later, still still doing it.
It's crazy, man. I had that same feeling too when I got fired from the other radio station. I was like, I'm not done yet. I don't feel like I'm done yet. It was a fun ride, certainly, but I felt like I had more left in the tank, kind of like how you did.
Yeah, I mean, we were sort of, unlike bands today where I think they understand that it's such a different animal and that you can exist, you can be completely independent but we were in such a transitional point. We were one of those bands where we had to figure it out, because there was no template for the new way yet.
Right.
I mean, we're still figuring it out in this new way, but yeah, I mean, I'm just grateful to still be doing it and have people come out to see us and people sing along and whatever.
Well, I was trying to think of too, man. I always think of you in LA, but I know you grew up on the East Coast. When did you make that transition out to LA? Was it before the DreamWorks deal? Or was it once you got the DreamWorks deal?
It was a little bit of both. I mean, we started the band. Well, I started the band in Boston, and we had become sort of the big local band. We
Mhm.
could sell out every room in town, and we were kind of like the hometown heroes. And then I was getting worried. I'm like, because I'd seen it happen with other bands. What happens when that goes away?
Right.
And now you can't sell out the club, and so we had made a plan to just move. We didn't even know where. We were going to pick a city and just move there and do it again and try to build up a following in a different part of the country. But coincidentally, that's when we got a call from DreamWorks that they wanted to sign us. So at that point, I was like, well, let's just make it LA because we just wanted to be in the same city as the label so we could be in the office bugging them constantly about our record and our band. So yeah, it sort of all kind of came together. And that was 96, I think. So it's a
Oh,
long
wow.
time ago. Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
couple years before the actual album came out.
Well, we had put out a couple indie records, and then we put out the first DreamWorks record in '97,
Uh,
and then the follow up, which was in 1999, which was Tonight the Stars Will Roll with Worlds Collide. And that was kind of the one that most people think is our first record, but it's actually not. But that's the one that kind of blew up for us, which was insane.
Yeah, and crazy that that's now 25 years old.
It's crazy to think. I mean, I think anybody maybe who starts a band always feels this way, that you just think that, oh, this will last a year or two, and and suddenly you're just like, holy shit, like, you just start adding up the years and like, how is this even possible that I'm still doing this?
I
I always feel like every album's the last album until I start making the next one.
I definitely wanted to touch upon the new album, Abandoned Ship. I loved the last one, Noble Rot, and was stoked for this one as well. And I felt like the last one had a little bit of a kind of a movie vibe to it with Fake Blood and all that. And I think you were writing and directing some movies at that
Yeah.
time. Abandoned Ship had a maybe I'm wrong, but it kind of felt like a little bit more of a look back and a little bit of a retrospective, a little bit more than the prior album.
Yeah, you might be right. I mean, I think I always try to, I mean, I don't know. I never have a plan when we start making a record. And generally, like, when I start making a record, what I end up with is probably entirely different than what I set out to do in the first place. But I mean, I think sometimes there is a an instinct to look back and to like figure out like what was cool about you know what we did 30 years ago, what was cool about what we did 10 years ago, and just kind of use. I mean, look, this band's always been a weird, eclectic mess of styles anyway. So just trying to harness all those things together is a challenge in itself.
How quickly did you start working on Abandoned Ship versus, the Noble Rot? Did it take a, is there, I imagine there was like a little bit of a gestation period where you're like, ugh, I need some time not writing music, and then you start firing it up again?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the type of, I don't sit in, I don't have like a home studio, and I don't sit there and work on music all the time. So I sort of like let, I don't usually start on a record until, you have that idea hit you, whether it's a song title or just a melody or beat or whatever. I usually let the ideas come to me. It seems like we're on this continual like 3 year,
Mm-hmm.
every 3 years, because like, you make a record, then you tour forever, and then you need a little break, and then it's crazy. You'd think you could put a record out every year, but it's virtually impossible. Um, and then the way we make records these days is much different than the old days. The old days, you'd get in the rehearsal space with your bandmates, and you'd write and you'd get it all dialed in, and then you'd go in the studio for X amount of weeks and 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 bang it out. Now it's like, you get together with your buddy with a laptop and work for a couple of days, then maybe you revisit it in a month and you do work a little bit more, and it kind of comes together in a much more um random way, in a sense, but yeah, it's definitely a different vibe now.
I would imagine the tough part would be, when with the old model with the studio and you go in for a month or whatever the timeline is, when you're done. With the new model where you kind of work on it here, work on it there, how do you ever know when something's done?
Yeah, I mean, I just never done, right? Like, you just have to stop at some point. It's like anything in life. So I think that it's always like, I've always found with me, it's like, you make a record and you think it's done, and then you go and write one more, and that last one tends to be like the best song, because like pressure's off. We've got a record. Let's just try one more stupid thing, and then ends up being the coolest part of the record.
What was that one for Abandoned Ship?
I don't know. I'm trying to think how it might have been. What was the one? It might have actually been 1999, which
Huh.
has ended up being, we don't do singles anymore necessarily, but that was the one we sort of started playing live that seemed to connect with people. And, I think there's also, for whatever reason, there seems to be this late 90s nostalgia movement that's going on when you see Limp Bizkit bigger than ever. And we see it, we go play these festivals, and the enthusiasm level for our music is way higher than it's been in a long time. You see kids like 12, 13 years old that know the songs, and it's just I think a lot of people are revisiting that time as with fond memories, and then they're passing it on to their kids or younger siblings or whatever.
I think CDs are going to be coming back any day now. Watch.
We'll see.
I got worried when I saw 1999. I was like, oh, he's covering Prince, huh?
Yeah,
The
right. Imagine
Go-Go's
that.
cover on the last record. So I was like, Prince, Go-Go's, hey, it's all in the same realm.
Yeah, listen, I would probably do all 80s and we did a cover album called Copies, Clones, and Replicants, which I think we did in like 2011 maybe, and a lot of it was like 80s stuff. It was super fun to do.
I think my favorite tune on the new album is probably Bloodsuckers, and
Ah,
probably one of the more heavy jams. And I like all the different twists and turns that you take with the band, but I'm still waiting and praying that one day there'll be like an all-out metal record from Powerman 5000.
yeah, I know. Look, I'm so musically schizophrenic. I would love to do 10 different albums and just go full on in one direction, right? Like, and just make like a full electronic record, a full super heavy record, or whatever, a punk rock record. But I mean, it's just like there's not enough hours in the day to do that stuff. And I don't know if anybody wants that anyway.
I do. I certainly do. I think it'd be cool, or at least maybe just one blistering metal
Yeah.
tune on the new on
Well,
the
maybe the
next album.
next one will be that for you. Yeah.
Speaking of metal, man, and anniversaries, well, coming up on 25 years pretty quickly here, Summer Sanitarium tour that you did a million years
Yeah.
ago. And we're an old school radio station. We do a feature called Mandatory Metallica, which you're going to be a part of, and wanted to look back on that tour and any memories or anything that jumps out to you from that tour.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest, well, I mean, there was a lot of memories. I mean, just that was, at that point in our career, we had never been a part of something so massive. I mean, we were going on second, so we're probably going on at 3 in the afternoon or something like that, and playing in front of 60, 70,000 people. I mean, we had never experienced anything like that before. We had played big shows. We had done Ozfest. We had opened for Kiss, but it was nothing to that level. In just how every band on that tour was just like, blowing up, and it's such a high level. So just that overwhelmingness of I remember there was one show we did, and I was told the crowd to jump and just to look at 60,000. I remember turning around and looking at my drummer, just laughing, like, can you believe what this looks like? Um, but there was one day, the craziest day was when James Hetfield was injured.
Hmm.
He'd done something to his back and couldn't play the show, but they didn't cancel and they didn't announce it. And so they just threw together this weird, like, mess of a jam with all the other bands going up there and playing Metallica songs. And how that didn't turn into the biggest riot on earth, I have no idea. Somehow, and they're asking me like, what? I'm like, I didn't know any, like, I didn't have any Metallica songs memorized. I couldn't sing any of them. I was like, I can't help you guys. I'll just stand on stage if you want me to. But yeah, it was nuts.
Yeah, I was going to say, did any of the guys in the band participate? Your guitar player or anyone go
Yeah,
out?
I think our then guitar player Mike Tempesta, who was, without a doubt the biggest metalhead of the group, he could easily step in
He's
and,
like, Spider, I got this. Don't worry.
yeah, just take it away. Yeah, if you guys do any Devo songs, let me know. I'll be up there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you have any interaction with the guys over that tour and interact with any of the Metallica guys, Lars or anyone?
I mean, not a ton. I mean, Lars was always the most social of all of them. I'm sure, but it's funny. It was still at a point, even though we had, we had become a big band in our own right by that point. I was still very. It was all still felt very new to me.
Hmm.
So I just tried to stay out of the way and not insert myself too much. But yeah, so I didn't want to like overstep and try to be like, just like
Fanboy or
throw
anything.
down with everybody.
And what would you rank yourself as a Metallica fan? I mean, kind of a more passive fan, not a big fan of Metallica.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because I didn't, it sounds like it's sacrilege, right? Like, but I didn't know. I wasn't like one of those diehard Metallica fans going into the tour. I mean, I knew that obviously the big songs like everybody, and
Sure.
so I was sort of learning as we went along. I knew more of Pantera than Metallica, I think, at the point, because we had toured with Pantera too. So I sort of was, it was sort of like at the time, a bit of a rivalry between
Yeah.
those two. Yeah.
The two biggest metal bands on the
Yeah,
planet
for
at that
sure.
point. Yeah, you always had more of a punk rock background or punk influence in your music, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I did. Yeah, I mean, I grew. We had sort of gotten lumped into this sort of new metal thing, and but yeah, growing up, I mean, I was just a straight up punk rock kid. I listened to the Clash and the Sex Pistols and the Ramones and Black Flag and Minor Threat. I mean, that was my upbringing, you know. Um, and at that time, this was, that like there wasn't a lot of crossover
Right.
between punk scene and metal scene, not like today where it's kind of all, so there were a couple like I feel like Motorhead was like a
Yeah.
band that like
The bridge
existed in
band.
both worlds. That was like the bridge, between the two worlds. So it wasn't until later that honestly like touring, because we toured with a lot of metal bands, whether it's like I said on Ozfest or Summer Sanitarium, that I started to get my metal education.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Motorhead because they really are that bridge band. Metal guys like them and punk guys like them. And I think
Yeah.
Maiden's kind of like that too. Maiden's one of those bands that the punk guys kind of like, and certainly all the metal guys are into.
Yeah, for sure. AC/DC was another one as well. I felt very punk rock in a sense.
Yeah, I don't. To me, the AC/DC is just straight rocket. Like they're the
Yeah.
definition. You look up rock and roll in the dictionary, it should have a picture of AC/DC.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you play any instruments? Do you play guitar at all or anything?
Very badly. Yeah, I can play a little bit. Like being around so many musicians for so long that you can not help but pick up a little bit, like play a little beat on the drums, or I can put together some chords on the guitar. I'm certainly not a guitar player, but a lot of our songs will start with some really fundamental guitar part that I put together.
Ah,
Either that or I sing the part. Like a lot of, it's funny when, I've had a lot of band member changes over the years, and a lot of times when we get a new guitar player, they'll always say like these songs don't feel like they're written by a guitar player. I'm like, well, yeah, because most of them were me singing some riff to a guitar player and him figuring out what I'm trying to. So they're very, like the riff to When Worlds Collide is probably me just going da da, like singing the part. So yeah.
love it, man. Well, I appreciate all the time and looking forward to this show. And any sort of set direction for the show, or is it just going to be the standard show? Are you leaning into Tonight Stars because it's the 25th
Yeah,
anniversary?
I mean, I feel like we actually have been a little bit. I mean, we still tried. I don't. I've lost count of how many records we have. I feel like we've done 11 or 12 albums. So putting together a set list becomes really challenging. You have the ones that you have to do, like
Sure.
everyone. But I think lately, I've definitely for a while. I think I didn't do as much from that time period, but lately we've been putting in more. So I
Hmm.
feel like it's definitely leaning a little bit heavy to the Tonight the Stars Revolt years, but we still try to do newer stuff and yeah, just mix it up. I mean, honestly, just try to pick the coolest songs to go off the best live. That's really all that, just put the best show possible that we can.
And a couple new ones in there too, I imagine.
We try, yeah. I mean, look, I feel like you always have one or two from the newer stuff that we've been doing, like from the last album, the one before, like Black Lipstick and
Yeah.
Play God or Play Dead. We've been doing from the new album, we do in 1999, and we actually busted out. There's a new song that opens the new record called Invisible Man that we've been
Yeah.
playing, which has been like I didn't think it would. I was like, we'll give it a shot, see how it goes, and it's been like killing live. So you never know.
I'll for sure see you at the show.
Yeah, all right, man. Thanks. Let me know if you need anything else.
I will. Thank you, Spider.
All right, see ya.
Bye bye.